Good afternoon in Germany and good evening in India. Dear participants, guests and friends, welcome to our first Creative Days Virtual Symposium on the future of cities beyond architecture, which is taking place as part of the Festival Stuttgart Meets Mumbai. My name is Poonam Choudhry from poonamdesigners Studio, and I'll be moderating the session. So this year's theme is Beyond Architecture. For this, I would now like to welcome our speakers, Nandini Somaya Sampat, Architect Director SNK from Mumbai. A warm welcome to you. And Professor Tobias Wallisser, Architect Partner Lava, Stuttgart, Berlin, and now I think also Shanghai, and Professor of the Unit for Digital Design, Innovative Space Concepts in the Department of Architecture at the State Academy of Arts in Stuttgart. We would also like to welcome Ms. Dobrich, Head of the Honorary Consulate and organizer of Stuttgart Meets Mumbai, and Jürgen Morhardt, Consul General from the German Consulate General. This platform is possible because of partners who are supporting the Creative Days. So we would like to thank the Wirtschaftsförderung Region Stuttgart and our media partners like Design, German Architects, MD Magazine. We would also like to thank the Indian Honorary Consulate for including our webinar on the festival Stuttgart Meets Mumbai. Let me first introduce you to our background as Poonam Designers Studio. Me and my partner, Martin Bargiel, founded the studio in 1994. And since then, our interdisciplinary studio has shifted its work from textile and graphic design to product, interior design, visual communications, research, installations, curation, and events. We work across the disciplines and interculture. And we follow the slogan by Eliel Saarinen, who said it perfectly: always design a thing by considering it in its larger context. A chair in a room in a house in an environment in a city plan. So we see the things in context and act local and global. For the task of the future of cities, we founded the Creative Days, an international platform which was founded by us with partners and supporters in Stuttgart in 2016. This platform promotes an interdisciplinary exchange in design, arts, architecture, and urban planning. It consists of a symposium and different events. You can see the speakers we had till today. Tobias is second time at us, also very nice thing to have someone twice. And at this symposium, there are outstanding lectures by Indian and European designers, architects, urban planners, thinkers who talk about sustainable design and the challenges of the conurbations for the future of cities. Accompanying events which present design, arts, architecture, and handicraft round off the Creative Days. With this platform, we want to promote the exchange and networking, create opportunities, new cooperations, discuss, initiate new projects, listen to thinkers, and inspire to shape our future together. One of the guest countries is always India, because we wanted a bridge to India. For me, as being originally from India, it's interesting for me to see how it is developing with design and architecture there. And we have a town twinning between Stuttgart and Mumbai. So that is why also the Creative Days take place in summer in July during the Indian Summer Week. Last year, we had a hybrid event of the symposium due to obviously the pandemic situations. And you may watch the short film with the architect Rupali Gupta, who was our guest speaker, and also the live stream from October 2020 on YouTube. You will get the links via chat, so you can just click or just save it and have a look afterwards. But it is not only about the symposium. It is a personal relationship and exchange. So when the Indian architects come, we take care of them. We visit with them the interesting places in Stuttgart and show them the historical and architectural background of the city, like the Weissenhofsiedlung, Daimler Museum, We go for typical Swabian food. I know once Kässpätzle for Samira Rotot, they were so heavy for us, but she was so enjoying this meal. And we go for a meal after that. So it's all about meeting and exchanging. And you see the events in the middle of the line of the presentation, where we have an open atelier and curate exhibitions, like one we had, the Art of Indian Posters at the Raumgalerie. So we try to get all the events during this time which relate to cities and design and India and, yeah, well, of course, also international. And on the other hand, we had a very nice trip to India in 2018. So we went to Mumbai and visited Sami Padora, and we went to Ahmedabad and visited Aniket Bhagwat, who is also at the advisory board with us. And we had an exchange. They showed us their studios, and we could see the architecture. So that is what is actually about that. And maybe we'll organize a trip to India and go with the speakers, or what we are working on the further programs. So stay tuned for that. Now let me talk about cities, because when we talk about the future of cities, we should mean that we create livable cities for us citizens. Cities are influenced by the history, the people, the infrastructure, mobility, architecture, and more. The cityscape nowadays is more than ever marked by the concepts of urban planners, architects, investors, political decisions, mobility concepts, digitization. There are challenges like housing for the poor and affordable housing for the middle class. So we are not only to talk about big projects, we want to know how the current situation in the cities could be improved and which ideas could change the way of living for the people. And we want to know more than the concepts. That's why we took this title to say Beyond Architecture. And we invited Nandini Somaya Sampat and Tobias Wallisser. And I would now like to introduce you with a short bio to the architects. Tobias Wallisser is a partner at the award-winning international practice LAVA, Laboratory for Visionary Architecture. Was founded in 2007 by directors Chris Bosse, Tobias Wallisser, and Alexander Rieck, and was the 2016 European Architecture Laureate. LAVA combines digital workflow, nature structural principles, and the latest digital fabrication technologies to build more with less. More architecture with less material. Currently, 50 architects work from 3 locations on projects worldwide. Tobias Wallisser teaches as Professor of Innovative Construction and Spatial Concepts at the State Academy of Fine Arts in Stuttgart. As Creative Director at UN Studio in Amsterdam for 10 years, he was responsible for many projects, the most prominent being the Mercedes-Benz Museum and the Arnhem Interchange. After receiving an architectural degree in Berlin and Stuttgart, he completed a postgraduate in digital design at Columbia University, New York in 1997. Architect Nandini Somaya Sampat is director of Mumbai-based architectural practice SNK, Somaya and Kalapa Consultants. Believes that we live in times where the architect must be responsible for a built landscape that cohesively represents the nation and its people. Upon completion of her Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from Smith College, USA, Nandani qualified as a solicitor from the College of Law, London. After working in India as a corporate lawyer, she decided to pursue her passion for design and change professions. She completed her postgraduate diploma in architectural interior design from the Inchbald School of Design, London, and upon returning to Mumbai, she joined SNK. Thereafter, she completed her Bachelor of Architecture from Rizvi College of Architecture. And now I would like to hand over to Professor Tobias Wallisser, to present his lecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Poonam, for the introduction. Thank you very much. I'm really delighted to be here again for the second time. It is almost hybrid. Last time it was in person. This time it will be digital. So in summary, you could say it's a hybrid performance. Let me start sharing my screen and with a couple of slides I brought for today. Okay, so the lecture today, I didn't give it an extra title, but actually it's my interpretation of Beyond Architecture. And actually what I'm going to show is what I believe in as architects, how we can contribute to maybe a different way of thinking about architecture first, but then also how this will have an impact on urban planning. This is a photo of the three partners of us. Actually, most of this has been said before. So currently we're around 50 architects. We're working in different locations. Our projects are mainly at the moment in Asia. So it's in Vietnam at the moment, and in the Middle East and in Germany. The difference, I was asked to elaborate a little bit on the difference between the different years. And what's quite interesting is 2019, we had a big opening of an exhibition. And this was actually the team that could attend at that time, coming to the architecture gallery in Berlin at that time. 2020, most of us spent actually like this. So everything was online. Online has a couple of good sides to it. I mean, the good thing is it doesn't matter where people are working. They're all working in the same way. We're all one big team distributed all throughout the world. You can see people here in various parts of Europe, but then also in Sydney and in Vietnam. So this is the good side actually of what happened. On the other hand, what we're missing, of course, is the personal exchange. The other thing which I really like is that as architects, we're trained as generalists and we have many interests. Actually, if you look at this, this is a poster of Columbia University. That was the poster for their invitation for their talks. And I really like the mixture of things which you see on there: architects, pharmacists, gardener, athlete, waiter, distributor. Actually, gardener is something which we like very much. That's a very good thing to cope with the current situation. In Berlin, we share an office space together with my wife, Leonie. She teaches permaculture, actually permaculture courses, and also runs urban gardens actually outside the office. That is a great thing actually to spend the time. If you're not on the laptop or not on the computer, it's really good to get your hands, get down and get dirty is actually one of her courses. And I think that is a very good occupation to balance actually the situation which we're in at the moment. So it all brings me to the question which I'm most interested in actually is, how do we want to live? And I'm aware that there's not a simple answer, and there will also not be a single answer, because all of us have different preferences and different choices. There are certain things which we all share, but I think in the end, there shouldn't be a single answer to this. There should be really the contribution of many people to this. But what you can see in this image, which we developed a couple of years ago, which is not meant to be a contribution as a design, it is just a summary of, well, maybe elements we have to deal with as architects, or also of remarks. So one of the things we should all be interested in is, of course, what is the quality of the areas we live in, like fresh air, clean air, food, mobility, and of course, how do we live with nature? So one of the questions is there an opposition? Do we see that as opposites, the city versus nature, culture versus nature, or maybe the human beings versus other parts of our ecosystem? And a couple of projects we've recently been working on. This is a project in Heidelberg, which is under construction. It is slightly delayed, but it will be finished next year, which is part of the German Energiewende. So this is a storage for energy which has been produced, renewable energy, wind energy or solar energy. And it's a big hot water tank, which will feature a public restaurant and an observation deck at the top, where you can see the magnificent valley of Heidelberg. And in the background, you can see Heidelberg Castle. So next time you come to Heidelberg, you can not only see the culture of the castle and the famous bridges, but you will also be able to see an object which is an infrastructural element, which has been turned into a public also into a public architecture. Another project that's a long time ago, that was a vision for Stuttgart 22, Stuttgart 21. Everyone knows that there was a lot of discussion about a new train station. I think we have to think about things in a much broader sense than about travel times from A to B. I think it would be amazing if we could say, if train travel is something which is completely powered by renewable energy, that suddenly a train station should become something like a power plant for renewable energy. So just think about things in a much more holistic way. One of the things I'd like to show very quickly here is an old project, one of the first projects we worked on, that was a vision by Foster and Partners for Masdar City, a city in the Middle East, to become the first carbon emission-free city in the world. And the PR in 2010 was, one day all cities will be built like this. Unfortunately, not even Masdar has been built like this for some reasons which I'm not going to discuss. But I still like the idea, what they had about sustainability objectives, to create outstanding living and working conditions, to provide outstanding air quality and thermal comfort, to create a zero carbon development, to develop technical concepts and rethink the way of living by replacing fossil power by solar power. I think that is something which, although it is like 21 years old, should still be a good line of targets or goals actually for any city in the world. And actually these are visualizations not from us but from Foster, what they thought about it. One of the things I like very much about this one is that you could say it's a combination of modern technology but also then with ancient qualities, knowledge about like proportions, maybe how to deal with the light, and really creating public spaces, an interweaving of public spaces and private elements. We actually participated in a competition for the city center, which was quite amazing because you could say, what is the Eiffel Tower of the first carbon-free city in the world? And of course, it cannot be something like an Eiffel Tower, an object, for various reasons. But our idea was here, it should be something which is more an atmosphere, and it is an event, is something which you can experience. So our idea was to create a square in the desert as the first, well, comfortable outdoor area which you can inhabit all year round in a desert climate, combining aspects of the Eastern tradition, like for instance an oasis where people come and they basically tell their tales, but also a forum where people can meet and discuss, which is a Western idea, and then something that is different during the day and during the night. So we had these big umbrellas working together with SL Rush in Stuttgart to create this plaza, which could actually be sheltered during the day and then open up and release the view towards the sky and the stars at night. So the idea is actually, this is an invisible monument, if you want. So this is more like an urban quality, which you wouldn't expect in an area like Abu Dhabi. So here's some visualizations of it. And basically in the end, this was the latest or the last drawing that was released about the entire project development. And you see at the center, this is actually the area, the plaza. And the plaza would be the icon, or was meant to become the icon for this entire development. Now we learned from this a lot of things which we can finally apply somewhere else. Actually, let me quickly run through the project which is under development now, which is the German Pavilion for Expo 2020, which based through the due to Corona will actually happen in this year, 2021. So it's the Expo 2020 happening in 2021. The motto of the Expo is connecting minds, creating the future, which of course is something which is quite fascinating. We think it is something which is worth looking at also for other projects we're working on. This is the project, our design. It's done actually for the German Ministry of the Economy. Actually, then the Messe in Cologne is actually the company that will run everything. And then there is Facts and Fiction is the agency that developed the content, and Adunik is the company that builds the project. So this is the overview of the entire Expo site in Dubai. You see these three wings. One of the wings is sustainability, opportunity, and the third one is mobility. And the topic, the German Pavilion, is in the sustainability area. And the topic of the German Pavilion will actually be, how do we deal with the Anthropocene so the age in which human intervention actually is visible in nature. The motto we developed is we will show Germany as a campus Germany. So it is a lab where you can come and discuss, where you can also learn something, but where you really, where you get introduced maybe to a German view of sustainability. So the idea is, it's like a university campus. You come, you check in, there's a pre-show, then you have 3 labs, the energy lab, the future city lab, the biodiversity lab, and then you have a main show before you can leave the campus. A traditional campus is flat in 2D. What we propose is to stack the campus in 3 dimensions. And of course, then we need something like a protective facade all around it to deal with the climate. Basically, in the end, the way we stack these, every lab is actually arranged in a box. And then once you go, every box has a big image that captures the topic of the lab. And then once you move outside the box, you're on a terrace. And on this terrace, there's interactive displays. And basically, you're on top of one of the next boxes to come. The idea is actually that this pavilion in itself becomes something like, it shows a couple of techniques of how to deal with sustainability. We use it as a showcase for some of the topics, and then these topics hopefully can be brought back and applied to something that goes beyond architecture. So we're using architecture to showcase what could be done beyond architecture. So what we're doing here first is, you could say, is like the massing of the entire scheme is done in such a way that we create an open space at the center, which is protected from the sunlight. We also have adaptive facades, and we create a building that is actually interesting during the day and also during the night. So the most important for us, connecting minds, creating the future, is actually that all the exhibition elements create a big open space at the center for everyone who comes there. So we're not focusing on the iconic view from the outside, that's only part of it, but the other thing is like the iconic experience you will have on the inside. So this is the overview of the entire pavilion. We start at the bottom with a pre-show. It's called Germany by Numbers, all information about Germany. Then you take an escalator, you come up to a higher level to the energy lab, which is the one in blue at the top. You get introduced to the topic of Energiewende in Germany, so the move to renewable energy. On the energy terrace, you can test a couple of things yourself. We have the future city lab. From the future city terrace, you move down to the biodiversity lab and the biodiversity terrace, and then through the main show is actually the end of the show. And above everything, there's a big roof. And the roof in itself is a piece of exhibition as well that creates a lot of passive cooling underneath. The idea is the only elements we actively cool down are the labs. They cool down. We worked on this together with Transsolar from Stuttgart. So we're only cooling down the labs, and we're cooling down the auditorium a little bit. The space in the middle will be around 28 degrees warm. On the terraces, we'll have around 26 degrees. This way, we reduce the need of the energy. We halve the energy consumption that is needed to create a comfortable temperatures. The roof itself is a big exhibit. It is visible everywhere, together with a company called Certain Measures, who program algorithms. They have a system that's called Mind the Scrap. The idea is that this roof is only an articulation for time. So it is actually, the roof itself is a resource storage. All of these elements, they might create something that appears very wild, but they're all straight pieces with very simple joints. They're not welded, they're just screwed together. So they could be disassembled afterwards, and they can be assembled in all sorts of different forms. And actually, this will be part of the exhibit. People can take a selfie shot, and the algorithm will reassemble the roof structure into a statue based on the selfie shot. The other part is actually a smart name tag. That is something people in Germany are very afraid of, but the idea is you give some information about yourself away, for instance, what language you speak, what's your name, maybe what you're interested in, and then this information will not go to a central computer system, but it is only available for the neighbors all around you. So if you go to one of these elements on the terrace and you want to play a game, it might be that the computer will tell you, you can only play this in a group. Maybe you turn around and you ask the 3 people, and then it gives the names behind you if they want to join you. So we're trying to bring people together, but we're also trying to use this to give information to the building, when to open the facades, when to provide cold air. So we're only climatizing the building wherever people are and wherever people really expect a certain comfort level. So here you can see an image of the construction progress. The building is almost there. It will be finished in 1 month, the construction, and afterwards actually all the interior fit out will be done. One of the things I forgot to mention is that we have glass facades in between these boxes, but partially it's only membranes and partially you can open it. So when the weather is not too hot, we can open the building and it will be as like being outside under the big roof. So what the building is trying to do is to illustrate the claim more with less. We're building a big pavilion. It's 25 meters tall, 4,500 square meters, but we're building it with a limited amount of materials and also with a very limited amount of massing. We have an adaptive climatization of this whole area. So we have different climate zones, as I showed, and we open the facade. The building, we see that as a time-based assembly of materials. They will come together for 6 months for the Expo, and then they will be disassembled. So we're trying to maximize or to only use materials which can be reused afterwards. And we're looking at the interaction between humans and the environment, not in such a way that everything is fully centrally run, but that things are done actually, the environment and the architecture is reacting to human needs. Now, if you look at this, I think that is a good test case for something which could be applied to many cities around the world. I'm just using the illustration from Norman Foster again, the idea that buildings should be adaptive to the climate, of course, and wherever it is necessary to support that with technical means, we can do that. We could see buildings as time-based assembly of materials. So the materials can also be disassembled and put together in a different way, following different needs. And of course, it's very important that we concentrate on the interaction between humans and other humans, but also humans and the environment. Okay, that was my lecture for today. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to the discussion later on.
Thank you very much, Tobias. This is a very, indeed, interesting insight. It's good to know more about details and yeah, so we'll talk afterwards. And now, Nandani, please, it's your turn.
So hello, everybody. My name's Nandini Somaya Sampat. It's an absolute privilege to be here with you all today and wonderful listening to Tobias. So I think I'm going to share my screen now and share with you some of our narrative from our studio SNK. So as Tobias said, I've stuck to the same heading for the symposium talk today. I'd like to introduce our firm. We are a Mumbai-based practice. We cover a variety of work from architecture to master planning, urban design, conservation, graphic design, and much more. The studio really began in 1975, and that's my mother, Brinda Somaya, and she started it alone in a garden shed with 2 other people. And it really has grown over the last 45 years to over 60 people. And as you can see there, this is really architecture as a group sport. So for us, this is our SNK family. And of course, very similarly in COVID, you can see down below, really working through the digital age, but still together. Our design principles through the 45 years are very much based on Indian architectural vocabulary, and it composes of 5 elements we believe in: water, walls, light, geometry, and material. These are all our works. We work across India. India is blessed with a variety of geographical landscape, climate, culture. So we find ourselves using these elements very diversely across the country, whether it's water as a connector, as a nucleus in an architectural perspective. We have beautiful light in India, creates wonderful shadows. If we're able to shade a space, it works very well. Walls, we have high density. We work in many cities across India as well. So to give a sense of connectivity within buildings and structures, walls become a defining space element that we're able to use. Geometry, of course, every architect's base grid. And finally, materials. In India, we have an abundance of this, and this really becomes a kind of lab for us to explore and really diversify our knowledge as to how to use materials in a more appropriate and sensitive way. We've really been fortunate to work across a very wide variety of typology of buildings, from community spaces to places of worship, residential, hospitality, campuses. And this has really taught us multiple disciplines and work methodologies across these different areas. We also have a foundation called HECAR. It stands for Heritage, Education, Conservation, Architecture and Restoration. We bring out several publications. We do a lot of our community and pro bono work through the foundation, and we also help the girl child through this foundation. So today, I think there were two topics that we wanted to collectively ideate on. One was, of course, the situation we're in. This picture really shows we are here currently, right in the present. And I believe that to look into our future, we really have to look at our past. And through that, we can really collectively ideate together for the future. So when I look at India, I came across this brilliant picture, which is a satellite image from 1966 of the Baba Atomic Research Energy Center in Bombay. And it was amazing to see that it was time post-independence in India. And you can see the brilliant master planning of this infrastructure project at that time. And I truly believe that it was a representation of the nation and its people. And also it was Dr. Homi Bhabha, the Indian physicist, who really was leading this establishment at Bombay. So even right in those early 50s, you see, the emergence of architecture and infrastructure in India. This second image, which caught my sights immediately and is very reflective of our country, is the strength of our people. This is an image of the construction of the Nagarjuna Sagar Dam, and it was built between 1955 and 1957. And it never amazes me to see, we have 1 billion people, but even at that time, the strength of our people, and it's in the hands of our people that we're able to build. So this really is a tradition that has been handed down from our past and continues into our future really in India. When I look at the past of our studio, this is some of the early brochures of our studio when we were still utilizing things like drafting boards, T-squares, compasses, initial drawings. And you can see the little shed with the 2 people that the studio started in. And this was how we really showed our work. And that's how, architecture was quite isolated at that juncture, but still very team-based. You were still working in these little pockets of creativity and inspiration. And today we really delve into the realm of technology. I mean, if you look at our processes today, we are sketching in 3 dimension, we're scaling models, whether it's using BIM, and all our deliverables are done in the digital forefront, but ultimately we are building in reality. So in our present, our work is on the ground and in the virtual world. And this is just one of our projects where we're superimposing how we work on these BIM softwares. But the ground realities, of course, as an architect are so important and are really the space where we thrive. The present has forced us to pause. And I come to our condition of the COVID-19 pandemic, which we really were thrown in on a global scale. This was not an industrial issue or a country issue, but a global issue. And it caused us to pause. And I believed and continue to believe that this pause has really caused us to rethink. It's given us a blank slate. And from the Roman time, it was a term called tabula rasa, which is called a clean slate, where I feel the human race has been given the opportunity to pause and really think about what has gone before. But in a tabula rasa, when you wipe the slate, you're really starting with no knowledge from the past. But we are fortunate. We have our knowledge. So how do we see our future and how do we want to write it with the fact that we know our past? So I believe that in the future, there has to be a huge sense of collaboration. And this is collaboration across various verticals. Being a lawyer myself, there's a lot of cross-application I see as a practitioner. But this was an extremely interesting book called Hybrid Practices that was brought out in the early 60s. And it was also talking about the Cold War period, where scientists and artists and architects and all got together and collectively ideated for the future. And that's really what brought out the best solutions. So it's really going to be this hybrid practice that really flourishes and gives us the future. We had a conference in Mumbai, an international conference called Women in Design 2020 last January. And it was very reflective of this idea of hybrid practices, because not only did we cover architecture, urban design, landscape, conservation, and all the verticals within architecture, but we reached out and had presentations from photographers and artists and people in publishing. And it was so interesting to see how those cross applications happen. We even had an exhibition which really ranged across the digital and the physical, where we also had a history of German women architects that was displayed there. So it was a very collaborative and interesting time for us to come together. So when we look at the future of cities, I thought I would look at the city I am in and where I've grown up and where I continue to practice from, Mumbai, really comprising of 7 islands that have fused together over time and now connected back to the mainland and has grown to a population which is sprawling. But I take you back to an image from 1850. And you look at this image and you see a reflection of what Mumbai was, whether it's the resources, the tremendous landscape and the richness of the resources, the culture, looking at what the people are wearing, probably the agricultural background, but also the architecture that was developing, its history and richness as a port city, and how it really grew from there. So right from a single image, you can see the history and the landscape reflecting the identity and the culture of where Mumbai started. And today I give you an aerial shot of Mumbai, where again, it's a reflection of where we are today, whether it is the density in the infrastructure, the tremendous growth that has happened, as you see the islands sprawling beyond almost into the sections of the sea and the water. So again, a reflection of the economic state and the cultural status of the city at the moment. And so today, as we talk about sustainability, what we come back to is a collaboration between various disciplines and various, from whether it's cultural, whether it's social, how we have to balance the economic and the environmental. And it all comes under this single head of sustainability. And so we at SNK really believe that collaboration will bring a win-win situation. So as you can see here, my little GIF, we're playing the old game of rock, paper, scissors, but it's a win-win situation. It's not a single win situation. So I'm quickly going to take you through a few projects where as architects, we have a responsibility to learn and build across disciplines and collaborate very closely. I think we have to constantly be educating ourselves across various areas. So our studio has been fortunate, and I'll take you through a few of our projects across, whether it's education, hospitality, technology, open spaces, and community, a quick glimpse into each. So when we're looking at a public iconic building, we had the opportunity to work on the Rajabai Clock Tower, which is really the central figure in South Mumbai. This again, a restoration and conservation is a very important part of our practice, as we do believe that existing buildings have an embodied energy that certainly can be revitalized and used by us architects for the future. So as you can see here, it was a tremendously rewarding but challenging project. We had to work at a height of over 110 feet and create a workshop there. You can see the inside of the clock. The clock never stopped during the entire conservation project because the clock hadn't stopped from when it had started. So we wanted to keep that tradition on. So what are those little traditions and, quizzical aspects of a project that one has to be sensitive to? And today we have finished the project and we're working on the lighting aspect. And she really comes to life in the life of the city. We also did a small exhibition where we documented various Mumbaikars who talked about Rajabai Tower, and one of them said, "I've never won a watch in my life. I've always worked as a staff member at a building near the tower, and the clock always tell me what time I have to go and where I have to go. So it's amazing how a structure like this and the importance that it has, even in the most simplest person's life in a city. A second is Empire Institute of Learning. It was a conversion of an old mill building. And in Mumbai, we see so many derelict buildings. And, there's often this idea of just demolishing the old and just instituting the new. But there is so much potential in what is existing. And this is really what we were given, a carcass of sorts. And the client came to us requesting us to build a small college for textile and fashion designing. And so we decided to make a little internal street within this entire carcass, keeping a budget in mind and bringing to life this sense of modernity, a vibrant interior for young students, and keeping it light and fresh using the north light aspects of the building that existed. So there's so much that existing buildings give us, which we're able to utilize moving forward. Here, Bombay House is the global headquarters for the Tata Group. This was a real privilege to work and do this project. What becomes important here is a collaboration here with the history and the narrative of the group. We believe in researching and that an office space be reflective of who the company is. We went back to the history, the founders, and also there was a big merging of technology here, a future. So how do you infuse how we live and work today in a very contemporary setting in an older building without it necessarily being a new contemporary space? So, of course, we gave them breakout spaces that are all technologically driven, agile spaces that they're able to work in today. The building is completely sustainable and LEED rated, and it really is continues to be an important landmark on that street. And it's named after the city, which we think is so appropriate. It's called Bombay House. So I think to have that continuity, to continue the fabric of what has gone before and let it be representative of the future becomes very important. And finally, there is heritage in every part. There are the dogs of Bombay House who have always been there before for many, many years, and we had to continue looking after them. So even in a very contemporary setting, we actually built a kennel from within. And I remember working at 2-3 o'clock in the morning on the facade of the building, and these were the dogs that were my security at that time. So there are some parts of a city that you cannot detach from the building. A building works with its people, with the culture, with the street, and within the neighborhood. So there are all those aspects that you have to respect and take into account. Another very different project, an animal hospital in Perel. And so we go from a very high-end corporate office to an animal hospital. And here they had a very small budget and they wanted to really upgrade the best we could. This was one of our pro bono community projects. And this was the aviary that we did for them. And of course, just making sure that we could listen to the requirements, work within a budget, be sensitive to Indian conditions. And as you can see here, this was the cow shed. And, you know, how do you get down to basics and learn how to work, you know, on a practical level, even with a scale of project of this size and of great importance to the city. This animal hospital actually saves 10,000 animals a year from the streets of Mumbai. So, you know, that is a contribution in its own right as to how, you know, we can as architects help and contribute back to the community. And you can see the cow shed is in full motion even during COVID times at the moment. Then we move, of course, to hospitality, which is a very important area, which also has been hit by the pandemic. But again, bringing in here, we very much believe in introducing arts and crafts. Even during the COVID period, the arts and crafts people of India suffered immensely. Our studio was one of the many who wanted to ensure they had work and were able to support themselves. So this entire hotel was based on the scripts of India. And every artwork that you see here that has been integrated as a second level was done by Indian artists. We even integrated elaborated it in small details, from the bedding to the soft furnishings to the backboards. So, and then got these details and collaborated with textile designers and artists to really do these works. So again, if you're a visitor coming here, and this is a corporate hotel, every time you experience or learn about something new about our country. So in a sense, you know you're in India. There always is this reinforcement of where you are. And this colors, as you can see from the exterior of the building, at night, it just lights up into this beautiful combination of colors. Another collaboration that we were very fortunate to do was an exhibition. This was a collaboration between the British Museum, the National Gallery in Delhi, and it was held at the CSMVS Museum in Mumbai. We were selected as the exhibition designers for this gallery, for this exhibition, and it was a tremendous collaborative experience. We had to cover over 200 objects in over 1.8 million years, that across 15,000 square feet. And over here, you were catering to an audience right from farmers who were coming from rural India, who could not read or write, who probably could not speak the same languages, right to PhDs and academicians, and really people with a complete high level in education. So how do you kind of work with that diversity? And in India, these are the challenges we have. So we decided to use color again to allow people to wayfind through the entire exhibition, and that the color enhance each space that there is. So right from shared beginnings, which was the first space where you're going through 1 million year old hand axes as if you're going through the caves. And then on the right, you emerge into empire, which is this deep red of grandeur. And you have these columns from wonderful palaces and these Chinese rubbings from noble times. So you get a sense of the ambience, and the objects are just enhanced through the design. And this was State and Faith, where you talk about where the world was impacted by religion and how that took over. And as you can see right in the middle, what we call the gateway objects, there is a Christ juxtaposed with a Ganesh. And one would assume that the Christ is from the world and the Ganesh is from India, because the exhibition was India and the world. But the irony is the wooden Christ was from Goa and the Ganesh is from Indonesia. And that story that is layered and talked upon is so interesting, and the way the entire world and the community is intertwined. And as we rolled through the entire, there were 7 different exhibition spaces. There was Freedom, which was this one with Gandhiji's bust, and several other objects. And we ended in a space called Time Unbound. So we wanted to take people through a vortex in time. You started 1 million years ago, and you really come up chronologically, and you end again in this vortex of time before you go back into the real world. And you end with a wonderful object from an artist called Talur. And I think this really talks about the time we're in. It's a statue of Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva is considered, the creator, but also the destroyer, and he's the Lord of the infinite. And what Talur has done is he's really ensconced Shiva in the center with concrete and money, because he says this is what the world has become obsessed with. It is really construction and money that has overtaken us all. And is that what is going to destroy the infinite? And what we did is we put mirrors behind the object, so you could see it in infinity as you stood there. There was a repetition. So really, it's up to us to determine what our future is. And India really is a combination of that history and of the future. And Talur, I believe, has captured it here beautifully. So as I mentioned, 1.7 million years, 210 objects and 9 stories cannot be done without a team. Collaboration is not about gluing together existing egos. It's about the ideas that never existed until everyone entered the room. And that's what it really was. It's not single people who can create something special. It is the group that makes it happen. Religious buildings become extremely important in our country. This was a little church that we did. It was such a small property that the cross actually had to go outside on the boundary walls. And it's become the heart of the community and remains so today. And it's also a responsibility of the architects to continue exploring, rehabilitating, creating creating all this diversity of space. In India, we've also had the opportunity of working with several international architects. This is with Todd Williams and Billy Cien, who are now doing the Obama Library. We've worked with them for over 12 years. This was a campus we did with them in India. Again, such an important indoor-outdoor spaces, the use of arts and crafts, and really collaborating with them to see what is possible for the future. Again, another project with a PCF in the US. It's one of the tallest residential buildings in India. For us, it's also learning. How do we build a 100-story building? What technical and structural information goes into that? It's an education for us. How does it work within our country in context to our culture? We also had to ensure that, there was a community pathway that goes through. We had to ensure that the flats accommodated staff, which happens in India. So there's so many idiosyncrasies which come in to make it appropriate for us to live in our cities today. This is Colaba Woods, a park. It was initially a dump yard, and we converted it into a park for the neighborhood. So the fact that a derelict little plot of land can be taken and converted into something for the community is so important. The local society wanted to charge 5 rupees to allow people to come in, but we fought against this, and we said every person should have equal right to use the park, and that's what was done. So the sense of equality has to continue, even though this diversity of economics seems to be widening in nations. For us as architects, it's equally important to fight for that. And the final little project is called the Malabari Hall. This was for a community center called Seva Sadan. They have been supporting women since 1908. They have been training them, housing them, ensuring, really empowering women over the last few decades to go out and get skilled. And they had this little building in the heart of the city, and you can see the pre-restoration. It required assistance from us. It was very important because it was for these women and for the small NGO that was being run. And the main area that we worked on was the Malabari Hall, which is used for extracurricular activities for the girls. It is also let out to the neighborhood for local weddings or events. So this is a really small building in a community that has played a very important role on a social level, but also on a community level. It can often be very lost and easily, be acquired by somebody and really, raised. But we're fortunate to still have trusts that are looking after buildings like this and, entrusting us architects to rehabilitate them. And this was on the day of the opening. So I took a picture from 1920 when the building first opened, and you can see it today being opened by Mrs. Advani, the president, with the girls today. And that's the story of the building. That's the journey. And that we could be a small part in the continuation of that journey, we find ourselves very privileged. We were very excited that this little hall won the UNESCO Asia Pacific Cultural Heritage Award of Merit in 2020 for conservation. So I will just end with 2 small thoughts. This is a sketch by William Heath in 1828. And it's titled, Lord, How This World Improves as We Grow Older. And this is Heath imagining what he believed the future of the world would look like. And it's amazing that in 1828, he drew, the vacuum tube. Today, we really have the tube which can suction people through. And this tube says direct from London to Bengal. And you had motorized horses that were going through and an entire air balloon system suspended, and they thought about aeroplanes. But what was really interesting, even though he drew the future, look at the buildings that he used. It was still contextual to his time. You can see hints of public buildings that he might have been familiar with, and bridges and infrastructure that he was familiar with. So even though he was looking at the future, he was bringing some of his past with him and some of his identity. And the second contrasting picture I wanted to share was by Hugh Ferris, and it's called The Lure of the City, the Metropolis of Tomorrow. And to me, this is the complete diagrammatic opposite. This is a blur. You see the human in a small scale juxtaposed with these massive structures, but there's almost a loss of identity. Ferris has in no way brought back anything with him. He sees the future as this massive kind of structure. So I do believe that for the future, we have to look at our past, bring some of that identity in. And I'd like to end with the path to our future passes through our past, and the present is the time to act. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Nandini. This was really a lot of stuff, indeed, but I think it shows the history of India. Yeah, we'll start with a few questions, and I will start with Tobias. You showed the German pavilion, and now talking about, this is really now the question, Nandini is talking about identity in India, and as me now growing up here in Germany, and I'm so in between the European culture and the Indian culture, it is always like, it pops every time up, what is the identity of the Germans? Yeah, in a few ways they have difficulties. Now, I would like to know this German pavilion, what you have, where you did the concept. What is in that pavilion? What is the identity of the Germans? How do you show that? You have shown a lot of technical things, but is there anything where you had this this feeling, this has to be shown in a German pavilion?
Well, I think there are lots of things which I haven't shown yet. Yeah, one of them is the restaurants, and I think if you go to the restaurants, it will be very German, even though that's not very simple in Dubai. Like pork, like German heavy traditional cuisines, there is a lot of pork, and that is not necessarily what they would, what people in Dubai would actually appreciate in the first place. And of course, there will be beer. Hopefully, we have a beer garden, which is possible in Dubai, but then it's hidden behind a couple of trees. So this is something which is very German, I would say. Mm-hmm. But you're right, like the German identity in that case, of course, it's a world exhibition, and the world exhibition is always a potential or possibility for people not only to show their identity, but maybe to show their view of the on the world. And I think that is what the German pavilion does. It's the German view on how to be energy efficient, how to be very efficient in terms of very organized. Everything is it's called a pavilion, but what it actually is a complete event machine. It is a large-scale restaurant. It is for political events. There's a big VIP lounge. There's, of course, expected to be 3 million visitors in 6 months. If that's possible, I don't know, but that was the original calculation. And of course, it has this idea that people should learn something. And I think that is very German. We always want to teach the world how things can be done. Yeah. So in that respect, I think it is very German. And then, of course, it is very efficient. And probably there's another thing which I don't like very much about Germany, but usually we are very big in Germany on focusing on the very small points. Yeah. So we try to be complete. We try to we not only have to tell the story, we also have to tell the story with every detail possible. And that is, I think in that respect, and that is actually already in the briefing of a German pavilion. So I think it has to be German by default. You could never do a pavilion like the British pavilions, which are just big one-liners or pieces of art. If you think about the work of Thomas Heatherwick, it's not possible in Germany because the briefing is that we are a country with different states, and every state needs to be reflected in this. And actually, that's something I haven't shown, but there's a layout for every German state. There will be a big poster and a description of what's happening there. And of course, everything needs to be totally balanced so that all the inventions or whatever is shown there in the exhibits, that they are also distributed all throughout Germany. So there's something like the idea of balancing out different things and always, making sure that different points of view are captured So it's in the German pavilion could also describe, and that maybe the metaphor is these boxes which are in there. It is not a simple thing. It is a more complex assembly of balanced elements. And I would just think that this is typically German, beyond the sort of typical forms and materials. Like, for instance, wood would be a German material to work with, but it's impossible to make a halfway sustainable project with wood of this scale in Dubai. So it is a little bit, the answer has to be a little bit beyond, let's say, the visual things. It's more the aspects of the organizational aspects and the identity of how this pavilion comes together and is quite German.
And you brought one example with this bringing people together. It's quite interesting because now if you think of the pandemie, actually that's the purpose of buildings also. That's why we took also this to think about beyond architecture, bringing people together. Now we have the pandemie. That means we can't be together. Do you think this will have an influence on the buildings in the future, or do you think we'll forget it after 3 years or something like this?
It's quite interesting. Personally, I think that will have an influence, because one of the things is, of course, it's quite efficient to communicate via like digital means like we're doing now. But of course, you're missing this aspect of like being with people and like the social aspect of it. Yeah. On the other hand, there's some benefit if you do concentrated work. And I mean, whether it's the people in the office or also at the academy, it is, some people say they are much more efficient or can work in a much more efficient way, but they all say they're missing something. So I think what will change is that that office design will change. Probably if you want to write emails, you don't have to go to an office. So basically, I think office spaces will become gathering spaces. You go there to meet with other people, to have this 1 hour design meeting or whatever you need to do to create ideas together. And then you can go back to your personal space and develop something. Whether your personal space is in the same building or somewhere else doesn't really matter. Yeah, I think that is one thing. The other thing is, I think these worlds have to blur a bit more in a hybrid way, like traveling. Personally, I don't think it's a problem that we don't have to travel that much anymore. You know, clients expected us to be there next week, just like this, and then you fly around the globe. It doesn't make sense. You know, it's not, I think it is better to travel less often, but then stay for a longer time. That allows you to see much more and also to understand much more what you're seeing. I think that is the important thing. Yeah, like there's an old saying, I think it's from the American Indians, yeah, who said that if you travel somewhere, your soul needs another day. And I think that is, so your body might be there, but your soul isn't. Yeah. And in a way, I think that I think what will happen is that there's a different expectation. There are different travel modes. Traveling for holiday is one thing, but you don't travel there for 2 days and back. And I think that could happen to business trips as well. It needs a bit longer to prepare. That you should stay longer, but you don't do it as often anymore. And you substitute it with video conferences. I don't think that's a problem. And of course, buildings will need to adjust to that as well. So hybrid, I think hybrid systems is quite good. So why? Now we're sitting all behind a screen, which is relatively, well, it's boring after a while. It's not really a spatial experience, but there is technology out there which could give us all a more spatial experience of being together, which is better than screens. And I think buildings should provide something like this. And maybe if your office could provide this, at home you have a laptop, but if you go to the office, you have an immersive environment where you have the feeling that you are, well, that you can interact in a different way. That would be another reason why you go to an office. So you go to meet people in person, but you maybe also go there because you have a different virtual gateway to people you cannot meet in person because they're far away. And that way, I think I think we should combine the good aspects of both worlds into something which makes all our lives maybe richer. I really think that is the right way, you know, to use the resources in the best possible way. And time is also a very important resource.
The older you get, the more time gets important, right, Tobias? Yeah, that's true. The same thing in Mumbai. I mean, you have been now through the, we all are going through this pandemie, and now India is extreme. Like every time I go, I think the same. It's like you have this, you have the poor, you have the small houses, you have on the other side in Mumbai, these skyscrapers. Yeah, the whole skyline is full with that. I also notice the identity of Indians is like, it's really mixed. The one heart is going to this arts and crafts and everything, and the other, what you have also shown, these skyscrapers, and they're huge skyscrapers. Yeah, this is what do the investor? What is the development in India? Is this like going more and more, or on the other side? I know also from Samip. I mean, there are a lot of projects for the poor housing. Architects are working on that, but how is it developing?
I think, Poonam, I think in India, you have to, as an architect, really learn the skills to balance all these variety of projects. And that's where the challenge really lies. In the pandemic, I think there's been so much tremendous learning for us. I think the value of construction labor for us was tremendous. The fact that during the pandemic, all our sites shut down, the labor were tremendously scared and fearful. Many went back to their villages. So, we had to look after them. You started understanding the great value that they have. And this was something, as a practice, we've always checked on our labor at all our sites. We've built creches for the women. We have upskilled the labor. So these are basic practices in India that have to be established. And after a pandemic, these are the important aspects that have been brought to light, definitely. I think in India, there's great diversity, but there's also an abundance of heritage, of narratives, of history, of art. So that's the puzzle. That's the fun of being an architect. It's about delving and balancing all these aspects together and putting together something really special that represents the client, that is a responsible part of the fabric of a city. I think Bombay is trying now to develop itself on a master plan level. I think we have requested, many people have collectively come together, architects like Samip, all of us do get together. We try to ideate together. We call it collective ideation. I think the strength here is all of us getting together and, these ideas coming together. So in India, there is so much talent. There are people who have come back. After so many years now, we're all developing our practices there. So there's tremendous potential. And I think there is a sense of responsibility developing. But yes, it's challenging. But I love that every project is different. That is what keeps us challenged as architects all the time.
Yeah. And you say as architects, you have studied law. And so we, via email, I knew it from your bio also. And what did bring you to architecture? I mean, first you studied law, and is there any connection between law and lawyers and architecture? Is it any advantage to be a lawyer and then to study architecture or to be an architect?
Well, I think all of us, Poonam, you, Tobias, all of us are very good lawyers. We have to be in this business of architecture. We know that. So I think I just have a slight advantage. I got good training. It's always held me in good stead. I also think that the practice has developed into, our studio has become very research-based. And that was something I was very interested in bringing in. And I think as a lawyer, that's something law taught me is, you've got to start from understanding the subject, from delving into it, reading about it, really assimilating into it. And architecture is the master of the arts. I mean, how could I stay away? You get to do physics and psychology, and it's such a breadth. You can touch every aspect. And I miss that so much, I think, as a lawyer. As my grandfather said, no education is wasted. You always learn and apply. So it's absolutely been a fantastic journey, and I've been privileged to work with my mother for the last 15 years, and it's just been fantastic. So I think we've been able to really delve into different aspects of the verticals that we were talking about. And it's always convenient being good and quick at the contractual part. You can just go through that more efficiently.
Yes, is nodding. I think this is also one main part of the business today, that you have to handle the contracts and everything. Yeah, exactly. That's true.
So that's part and parcel of every business now. But I don't think I could have stayed away from architecture as a profession. When I was at Smith, I did an undergraduate education in the US. And over there, I did everything from physics to art history to mime to archery. I was on the crew team. And I love the list Tobias wrote. You're a gardener. we're literally a bit of everything. I thought, gosh, yes. So I think architects are really that. We're a bit of everything. And so to be slotted in a single profession just wasn't my path. So I'm glad that I can wake up every morning today and absolutely love what I do.
Yeah, that's great.
Lawyer was missing in the
Lawyer was missing.
Yeah, this is really a time as a designer. I feel also like I'm not coming from textile design, but like doing everything and nothing, and also going more and more into research. But I think that's how the professions have changed. Maybe the architecture from the historical way is always like this. It was always like this. But the designers also, we have to think more beyond design. So I have a last question to you both. Maybe Tobias can start. When we talk about smart cities for the future, I'm noticing and reading and looking and thinking, and I think always, how much smart do we actually need in the end in a city? Is this smart city what we see with this high-rise building and everything and technical and so? Is this really, it's already not working with a Corona app in Germany, yeah, because not everybody wants to give the data to everyone. So, that's the first where you can say it's not working. But the thing is really, is this smart city really this vision of cities what we really should look for?
I think the word smart is actually like a buzzword, smart cities. And ultimately, I haven't met anyone yet who has really a deep understanding of what a smart city should be, So we all assume it is clear what a smart city is, but I'm afraid no one is very clear other than a couple of people who are out to sell certain technologies, yeah. So if smart city is only about introducing more and more technology, that will be a big problem. And I don't believe in that. I don't think that is like, I'd like to quote Cedric Price, who said, if technology is the answer, what was the question, So what is the question to which smart city is the answer? Yeah. So maybe that would be the starting point to discuss what a smart city should be. I think on the other hand, that we should really use technology which is available in the way to make our lives better, to reduce the amount of resources we're consuming and so on. So for me, the answer would be technology that is useful to make people's lives better is welcome, and we should use it. But I would not say that we don't have to name the city according to that. It is something that should be there. And I think good technology is invisible and it simply works. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So something like these smartphones, they're called smartphones because they're much more than a phone. They are also cameras, they are diaries, they are sketch pads, whatever else, people playing games with it, you read magazines, you can store books on it. So that is something which it's up to you how you want to use it, but it could help you to improve certain parts or aspects of your life. And I think if the smart city is more something that it really revolves around the quality of life, and we should really produce anything that makes the quality of life better. So if we need less transportation, or we can use transportation in which reduces the amount of energy necessary, then I think is really good. But rather than I would always first look for a simple solution. So maybe taking a bike is better than optimizing the waiting time for finding a shared car or whatever. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, but that, of course, we always need to provide choices, and it's up to people how they use it ultimately. I don't think so. Smart meters and so on, I think, is very useful, but I don't think we have to promote it as something which is suddenly the solution to every problem.
Mhm. So we're running out of time, but I need one short answer, if it's possible. I mean, the Pallava city in Mumbai is the smart city, and the same question: is this our future with Pallava city?
I think not looking just specifically at that, or Poonam, but do we really want replications of just standard cities? I showed you that image of Ferris, where you have the individual with this blurred background. And when I think of smart city, I thought of the first image I showed you with Heath. I mean, it's about how technology infuses into a city. So the point is, how are we able to fuse or balance the identity and the heritage and what has gone before with technology that we have today? That will really make a beautiful blend for the future of a smart city. But it's not simply a replication of a standard model. Here again, I think the second thing is get architects involved, get professionals who are willing to give their time, and not just these replications of standard design. I think that will be important. So I'll just end with a quote: we need aware citizens, more doers, fewer advisors, and a sense of collaborative ownership. I think that would make good smart cities.
Okay. So we have a few questions. I don't know, can you see them? You can see them in the chats. Now I have to ask the technical support. Do I have to copy them and then send them? Sahil, are you there? There's one question. Okay, I'll start doing. Do that. Copy. Did you get the question? No, I'll send it to you. This is got this one. You have to look in the chat, Tobias.
Yeah.
There is one. I sent you the first question. Maria Dobrich asked, I had a look at a few design thinking office spaces a while ago. Right now, there are few live cases, or is that going another bad stunt?
No, I think so. I think the question is about design thinking office spaces, and I think that is not a bad stunt. I think office space as such is changing. We had this movement towards shared offices or WeWork, all these sort of co-working spaces, and basically there was a trend that an office becomes like a living room, and you just sit there. And I think that is still a trend. The moment we can go out again, that will be there as well. I think offices, we just have to think about it, that the boundaries are blurring or going to be blurred. So you can work at home, which a lot of people are doing now, whether you call it mobile work or you call it home office, whatever, people are working from home. At the same time, we have seen that trend before, that home elements like this lounge or sofa or something are actually exported or imported into the office, depending on from where you're looking at. So things are being blurred. And I think what will happen now is that the differentiation will be stronger. So we have certain infrastructure, technical infrastructure in the office, which we cannot have at home because it's too difficult or too expensive for single users, but you can share it in an office. Yeah, so suddenly it makes sense again. And of course, there are sizes or dimensions. Probably the most important part in an office space will be a big table where everyone can sit and work together, which is something you cannot do when you work from home. But I don't see the necessity to have cellular office spaces anymore, to be honest. So I think that is the trend which we have seen before will probably continue. So there will be spaces where you can like immersive workspaces, and that you can do in the office or you can do at home. But then offices really will have even more this component of meeting people and sharing ideas and maybe even eating there and so on. Yeah, something you cannot do working from remote.
Okay. Then there is a question for Nandini. How do you see the Smart Cities project's mission across 100 cities, shaping up the India for the future? What are the pros and cons for actually getting this implemented?
Yeah, I think there are these big plans for the country. There's a lot of thinking of how the country should be shaped through architecture. One of it is through the 100 smart cities. I think here again, as I mentioned before, Poonam, this idea of just replication really doesn't work in India. It really has to be customization. And I think for it to be successful, you have to include communities and you have to include professional architects from across the country. I'll give you an example of something small in the sense. We had a huge earthquake in Gujarat a couple of years ago, about 12 years ago, 15 years ago, and it had destroyed many villages, completely shattered to the ground. Now, when we returned there, the government had proposed that everybody would be rehoused. And of course, in these very cookie cutter houses that were just done on a grid system. And we were doing a community work for one village. And nobody had gone and asked the villagers, what do you want? And when we asked them, they had a simple answer. They said, we want to be and stay near the same neighbors that we grew up around. We don't want these individual cookie cutter houses. And that was a simple answer. So what we did was we actually diagrammatically laid out the village again and rebuilt the village on the same footprint. And we go and document that village every 5 years, and it's amazing how it's grown. My point of telling this story is there's an inherent aspect to the way humans live. There is this idea of existing community to be able to work within an existing culture and community. And just this mass replication is not going to, I think, be very successful. So I think we've got to learn from this. We have a very diverse population in India. I think there'll have to be different variants depending on where you're building, maybe one rural, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities. So I think this, again, a lot of ideation could lead to a successful solution.
Yeah, this is, I think that's a very important task that, and again, I think this has something to do with the identity. This has to do with people. And that's why I liked very much the title of Balkrishna Doshi, which he had for the exhibition at the Vitra Design Museum, Architecture for the People. I think you can't say it better because in the end, we live in houses and we people live in the houses. And so I think we have to think a lot about this balance between smart, as you say, absolutely. And it's nice, Tobias, that you mentioned the typical German beer and what belongs to Germany, I think a little bit more, but of course, Germany is like very much on the technical side, as well as India is on this arts and crafts. And it's a pity that in Germany, all the textile, I mean, they have shut down the textile companies. But I think in a way that handicraft has to come again back into the cities and that we have to do something that it comes back. And I don't know how it's in India going on with the shops and everything, because there are a lot of shops in Germany closing. So we have to work on that. And if you have a last impulse for our audience as the vision for the cities of the future in 1 or 2 sentences, then please.
Tobias?
Hey, maybe I think the vision for the city of the future, the good thing is that I fully agree with repetition. We should not try to replicate something which is somewhere else, but really first look at what the quality of our cities are and how to really enhance that and really like combine it with the technologies we have at hand. So I think it's really the combination of traditional aspects, but then also with aspects of how we can really change the way we're using the resources. I think that is the most important aspect to me, to create a life the best life possible for everyone who lives in a city. I think that is the challenge. And so there are different densities of cities, and of course it all depends on the climate. It also depends on the resources available. It depends on the history and on the traditions, and especially on the people. So I think the most important in that aspect to me would really be, you cannot hire a company to say turn the city into a smart city and everyone will be happy. I think you have to ask people what they really need and to work with them on the implementation of what is needed. Because if people don't identify with the space where they live in, it will not work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have one, before you answer, I have one remark here for Nandini. Restoration is a very important part of any country's culture. So thanks to SNK architecture firm to maintain and restore a part of Mumbai's cultural heritage. In Pune daily, we see old, beautiful stone bungalows being brought down and replaced with high rises. It pains my heart to see a part of my childhood gone.
Yeah, I think that's really how it's changing. It's morphing every day, but I do believe the future is also the sense of collaboration. I think possibly some of the greatest future cities would be German precision with Indian art and heritage. Why not? So, it's, the world is becoming smaller, and, it's really going to be these exciting collaborations which will take us into the future. So I really true hope, and I do believe that will be the way forward.
So thank you so much for the session today. We believe in the collaboration with Indian and European architects. That I think we believe in this bridge, and we are doing that since 2016. And I think there are things in general we have in common, and we have things not in common, but we can learn from each other. And it was a delight to have you here. Thank you so much for your time and for your insight, and hope to see you soon physically somewhere at Creative Days in Mumbai or in Stuttgart or wherever.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.